think I got cut off. But what I was trying to say is that you might have this situation where you're like, okay, um, if you think of these three poles, eventual poles, but then it's like there's like this line segment or horizontal meter where you're like, okay, based on that, what would be my good like? So the ultimate circle would be the ultimate skilled person would make that would fill for that triangle. Like it would be a 10 out of 10 on all points. But I would say it's like not all people have this skill. It's where like these people are kind of unicorns, right? But on the other hand, it's like there are people who are essentially are good at a couple of these things. Where you're like, okay, I could be a good businessman and also an engineer. Um, but it's quite rare that even you'd find a very good businessman versus a very good engineer. So you have these three trios where you're like, okay, I have this good businessman. This businessman is actually good at coming up with really actionable ideas that are eventually going to be translated to the engineer, and the engineer is going to take that off the ground, and essentially the engineer is the one that actually brings it to life. So this battle or communication that happens between the engineer and the businessman and also the investor is this like ultimate thing that you need to build a successful company. Okay, and now this is very much so obvious, but why am I trying to say like why am I even trying to discuss about the obvious here? Because um, well, it's always something I battle with. Essentially, it's like okay, you're like I let's say you want to start a company or a business, and then you're like okay, I need money, or you're like oh do I actually need money? But is it actually money that I need? Well, it's usually capital, and capital comes with people, often people, and some form of unit of currency or money. Um, and and this is usually the case, right? And as I said earlier, the investor is the one that provides the capital. Um, and most often, I only like attribute capital as um, people and essentially yeah, some measure, a unit of currency or some reward system. That's more than enough, rather than just attributing that to a dollar, crypto or whatever. It's like the investor just comes with some sort of reward system. So the investor is really good. Think of the investor as the most rewarded person, right? It's like they're the most rewarded person. Whatever they just their reward system is like hit to the max, that they feel to some degree rewarded, that they have to give out money to for some kind of business enablement. So that's it. An investor is not really a rich person. Most people might think when they hear an investor, they're like, oh, they must be so rich. No, it's just a person with a good reward system. That's it. So that's also one other area where I'm like, okay, okay, and when you define an investor has a good baked-in reward system. That means they can see risk and reward, and they can analyze and see possible potentials or opportunities here when it comes to capital allocation or whatever it is. So there's also this misconception when someone's an investor that you might be like, oh, they definitely know what they definitely have a lot of money, and that's often a wrong misconception up front. So that's also one part where I was like, okay, that's a very mature way to see things. That's a very developed way to see things, and not just at face value. If someone is an investor, don't really oversell them or oversee them essentially. But there's still another entity that is a critical part of the process. And unless they're part of the process, you won't really see the fruit of any given product or whatever. So they are essential and critical to the production process. But on the flip side, it's kind of ironic that engineers, I love being an engineer and working with engineers, but engineers have a broken reward system. Most, or generally attributed to the majority, or 90% of the populace, is that it's just because that we have a broken reward system that we cannot really understand how to, let's say, even the basic. Let's start with the basic things like how often you eat versus how often you do certain things. These are like reinforcement rewards that you do on the daily that eventually help you become a very successful person. But oftentimes, it's not in the midst of rewards that you get the exceptions. So, essentially, like exceptional people, especially, well, they don't really tend to value the average, right? Or the median, or whatever it is. So it's like these exceptional people have misallocated um, or essentially a reward system. So and it also comes down to like they're similar to how they are. I'm not talking about the goodness or the badness of. So I'm not talking about any virtue here. Essentially, uh, people could be bad businessmen, good businessmen. It's not really. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about those individual characters which make up a company, and essentially these people are really the trio, the stool, the what do you call it, the sitting stool or the pedestal for establishing a solid foundation. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like it's not something very hard or difficult to understand, um, but there are many layers to it for sure. It's not just one attribute that makes you a good engineer for sure. You could become a good businessman, or you could become a good engineer after becoming after being a businessman for a long time. But it's like it's kind of odd. It's as of saying someone would become a good mathematician by just being a physicist. So there's this domain or like bigger circle hierarchy where you can't really the smaller circle can never become the bigger circle. So it's always the case that is that it is. So my thinking is that engineering is still superior. It's not about superiority as well, okay? But if you ask me, like, it's not about superiority. It's just about which one is a bigger circle. I believe, and engineering is like, hey, you have a bigger circle that that can morph or shape itself into which is like, for example, business. Like you can extend that. Engineering skills are easily extensible compared to business. Business is critical numbers, and just you're pretty much focused on churning out and a lot of details. So, and one thing that is obvious is that has been told many times is that no one can teach you how to do business, and it is true to some degree. Or there's truth to it when people say that. And it's not to say that you cannot learn the facts of business. Like you can learn the facts of how to do business or how to really conduct business in a setting that is quite professional. Like you can definitely do business. You can manage business. So and also let me talk about another layer to this. So each now so imagine a three hierarchy where it's like there's let's say the investor, the businessman, and the engineer. They walk into a bar, but then there's the managers. So being a business manager, being an engineering manager, being essentially, but being what do you call it, an investor or investment manager. So when you add one more layer to it, it appears that they are the actual entities themselves. So they're just an extension. So it quite changes the total meaning and dynamics of what it is to be an investor versus when you add one more word to it, it totally changes the dynamics. And in fact, when you add management to anything, it just doesn't make sense at all, because it's like it just quickly changes its singularity. So I'm just talking about the single one entity. So I'm not talking about any additional management or whatever additional froth that you add onto that additional circle. So it just surprises me that oh wait, well it happens that like you only need to understand these three things or three entities. That okay, if I can fill the investor position versus the businessman position versus the engineer position, it's like can I maintain these three positions? If I can maintain these three positions successfully, my company will live long enough, and like it's just that